I just knew then that from the minute I walked on stage, I wasn't me. I was the person that I knew so much about because I had thought so much about her habits.
Some stars are born to shine, and others must walk through darkness to find their own light. Liza Minnelli belongs to the latter, the daughter of the legendary Judy Garland, who sang "Somewhere Over the Rainbow" and made the world believe that dreams could come true. Liza grew up surrounded by glory, but also by fragments. She witnessed how fame could make a person shine brilliantly, and then drown them in loneliness and addiction. Yet from the very place where her mother fell, Liza Minnelli rose. She didn't run from Judy Garland's shadow. She learned to walk within it, and with a voice full of emotion, fiery dance moves, and a burning vitality, she transformed herself into a new Hollywood icon. Not anyone's replica, but entirely her own. Her career has spanned more than 6 decades. From the classic cabaret that earned her an Oscar, to dazzling performances at Carnegie Hall in Las Vegas, and later, years of battling illness, addiction, and solitude. Her life isn't just a melody of fame, but a song of resilience and faith, the story of a woman who fell many times but never stayed down. Today, as Liza Minnelli approaches the age of 80, the stage lights may not shine as brightly as before, but her magnetism remains, not in the high notes or the dance steps, but in the way she lives, proud, brave, and unyielding to fate. For if Judy Garland taught the world to believe in somewhere over the rainbow, then Liza Minnelli has taught us something deeper. When the rainbow fades, the strong will learn to light their own way. Liza May Minnelli was born on March 12, 1946, in Hollywood, a place where dreams and tragedies often stand just one step apart. From the very moment she entered the world, she carried a name that drew global attention. The daughter of Judy Garland, the legendary star of The Wizard of Oz, and Vincente Minnelli, the masterful director behind Meet Me in St. Louis. People called her the child born in the spotlight. But to Liza herself, that childhood was far less glamorous than it appeared. The house she grew up in, though filled with music and fresh flowers, hid storms no one could predict. After The Wizard of Oz, Judy Garland became a global icon, but behind the screen was a woman being crushed by the Hollywood system. Studio executives forced her to take diet pills, stimulants, and then sleeping pills to keep her energy up and her figure intact. Those pills slowly became chains that pulled Judy into the abyss. Liza was far too young to understand. She only knew that her mother often looked exhausted, cried easily, and then somehow stood up again to smile radiantly for the camera. At night, when Judy couldn't sleep, little Liza would sit by her bed, tell stories, sing lullabies, and sometimes hide her mother's sleeping pills, replacing them with sugar tablets. That innocent act, Liza would later recall, was both a tender memory and the first scar of her childhood. The moment she learned to save her mother before she ever learned how to protect herself. During endless tours, Liza and Judy drifted from one hotel to another. Sometimes they had to leave in the middle of the night because they couldn't pay the bill. Judy turned those desperate moments into a game. "We're on a secret mission, Lizzie." And the little girl believed her. But deep down, Liza understood. Her mother was fighting, and the child was fighting alongside her. Those years, her father, Vincente Minnelli, was rarely home. Though he loved his daughter, his world was made of film sets, lighting, and perfectly composed frames. Liza's world, meanwhile, was made of sleepless nights, listening to her mother softly hum in the dark, trying to lull her own sorrow to rest. She once said, "I can't stand yelling. When someone raises their voice, I run away." It wasn't just the sensitivity of a fragile child. It was the reflex of someone who had lived too long in a house where tears were swallowed instead of cried out. Yet amid all that turmoil, one thing saved Liza: music. When she couldn't sleep, she would sneak backstage, sit in the empty audience seats, and watch her mother perform. When Judy sang "The Man That Got Away," Liza felt as though the world had stopped. She didn't understand the lyrics yet, but she recognized the magic in art, that mysterious force that lets people stand up and sing, no matter how much pain they carry. From then on, the stage became her true home, not the Hollywood of fame and spotlights, but a place where she finally felt safe. Growing up in the enormous shadow of Judy Garland was a journey full of contradictions. Liza loved her mother unconditionally, yet she feared becoming a replica, or worse, repeating her tragedy. Every step she took was watched and judged by the media. Is she as pretty as her mother? Does she sing as well as Judy? Can she ever escape that shadow? Instead of running, Liza chose a different path. She turned the shadow into light. She visited her father's film sets, observing how he transformed blank white canvases into whole worlds. She listened to her mother rehearse scales and tried singing along. She practiced dancing, acting, and realized that art was not just her parents' legacy, but the only thread that made her feel truly alive. Those early years were a mixture of splendor and collapse. Liza was both a witness to a golden era of cinema and a victim of the pressures that came with its blinding lights. Yet in that fragile space between brilliance and ruin, another star was born. Not from inherited fame, but from the strength to endure. Because before she became a symbol of survival, Liza Minnelli was just a little girl standing quietly backstage on Broadway, holding her mother's hand and whispering a promise to herself. "One day I'll sing and make you proud." As she entered her teenage years, Liza Minnelli faced the first great choice of her life: to live in the shadow of her parents, or to step out and walk on her own. In a Hollywood where family fame could open every door, she chose the harder path: to rely on no one. "I want people to remember me for my talent, not for my bloodline," Liza once said, and she meant every word. At 15, Liza began her journey to prove she could stand on her own without the weight of her parents' legendary names. In an industry where lineage meant everything, she took the opposite route, auditioning by herself, submitting her own applications, and refusing to mention Judy Garland or Vincente Minnelli. "I want to be judged for who I am," she said, "not for who my parents were." In 1963, at just 17, she earned her first role in the off-Broadway musical Best Foot Forward. Though it was a small part, Liza's performance immediately caught attention. Her rich voice, electric stage presence, and eyes that seemed to blaze with life led critics to call her a strange new spark on the New York stage. She was no longer Judy Garland's daughter. She was someone worth remembering in her own right. Just 2 years later, in 1965, at the age of 19, Liza took on the lead role of Flora Messeros in Flora, the Red Menace, the story of a young woman who dared to love, live, and defy society during the Great Depression. Her performance didn't just prove she could act, sing, and dance. It made her the youngest actress in history at the time to win a Tony Award. And that night, as she accepted the award, she declared proudly, "I am Liza, not Judy's daughter." Her early success wasn't luck. It was built on years of quiet preparation. As a child, Liza had followed her mother on tours across Europe and America, working backstage, adjusting microphones, changing costumes, setting props, and watching how Judy Garland held an audience in her hands. There, she learned a lesson no drama school could teach. Audiences don't love perfection. They love honesty. In 1969, at 23, Liza Minnelli made her first major appearance on the big screen in Alan J. Pakula's The Sterile Cuckoo. She played Pookie Adams, an eccentric, lonely, fiercely loving girl whose vulnerability bordered on self-destruction. The character wasn't glamorous or charming. In fact, she could make viewers uncomfortable. But she was painfully real. The role earned Liza her first Academy Award nomination for Best Actress, marking her transition from Broadway to film. Critics called her a different kind of Judy Garland, more raw, more defiant, and unafraid to show the cracks. But during that same period, Liza faced the most devastating loss of her life. Her mother, the legendary Judy Garland, died at 47 of an accidental overdose of barbiturates in her London apartment. The news hit Liza like a blade to the heart. In an instant, she lost not only her beloved mother, but the one anchor that had kept her steady through a lifetime of chaos. In the midst of her grief, Liza showed a rare composure. She personally organized her mother's private funeral, choosing yellow roses, Judy's favorite flower, arranging every detail, and inviting only the closest friends to say goodbye. She didn't want the ceremony to become a public spectacle, another chapter in the world's obsession with Judy's tragedy. When she looked upon her mother for the last time, she didn't cry before others. She simply held Judy's hand, as if to say goodbye without words. After the funeral, Liza admitted she felt as if the whole world had disappeared. Judy Garland had been not only her mother, but her guide, her confidant, and the very reason she had entered show business. Her death left an emptiness that nothing could fill. In trying to cope, Liza turned to sleeping pills and alcohol, the very things that had haunted her mother. At first it was just to rest, to forget. But soon it became a habit, pulling her into the same dangerous spiral of addiction. 3 years later, in 1972, the world witnessed a phenomenon named cabaret. As Sally Bowles, the reckless nightclub singer performing in Berlin's dazzling yet decaying pre-Nazi era, Liza Minnelli delivered a performance that redefined screen acting. Sally was both free and fragile, a woman who smiled on stage but shattered in the dark. With Cabaret, Liza not only won the Academy Award for Best Actress, but became an icon of her generation. She didn't sing to seduce, she sang to survive. Every lyric, every glance carried double meaning, both a cry for freedom and a plea for rescue. The scene, Maybe This Time, where Sally stands alone on stage, her voice trembling with fragile hope, became one of cinema's most unforgettable moments. A symbol of the human spirit's determination to keep believing, even in darkness. After Cabaret, Liza Minnelli was no longer just a Broadway star. She was a living legend of Hollywood. She had done the impossible, escaped her mother's shadow, and reached a summit all her own. That same year, 1972, marked another brilliant milestone. Liza reunited with director Bob Fosse, the mastermind behind Cabaret, for the NBC television special Liza with a Z. Filmed live at New York's Lyceum Theater, the show became an instant cultural phenomenon. With her powerhouse vocals, razor-sharp choreography, and magnetic charisma, Liza proved she wasn't just a film actress. She was a complete entertainer. The program earned her an Emmy Award for Outstanding Variety Special, while solidifying Bob Fosse's status as a creative genius. By 26, Liza Minnelli had achieved what few artists ever could. She joined the elite circle of EGOT winners, holding all 4 of the entertainment industry's highest honors: an Emmy, a Grammy, an Oscar, and a Tony. She won the Tony for Flora, The Red Menace, the Grammy for the Liza Minnelli album, the Oscar for Cabaret, and the Emmy for Liza with a Z. In the early 1970s, the title America's Queen of Entertainment belonged unquestionably to her. At the same time, Liza became a fashion and lifestyle icon in New York. Her bold pixie haircut, dark eyeliner, bright red lips, and fearless confidence made her the face of the city that never sleeps. Magazines like Vogue and Harper's Bazaar hailed her as the embodiment of modernity. No need for classic beauty, just attitude. In those years, Liza represented everything New York aspired to be: young, free, seductive, and unapologetically different. Yet behind the glittering lights and stunning costumes lived another Liza, weary, lonely, and burdened by unimaginable pressure. The public never stopped comparing her to her late mother, the immortal Judy Garland. Fame made her adored, but it also left her exposed. Behind her dazzling smiles were sleepless nights, unanswered phone calls, and a lingering fear that no matter how hard she tried, she would always be Judy Garland's daughter. After a dazzling string of successes in the early 1970s, Liza Minnelli entered a period when the glow of cinema no longer smiled upon her as it once had. In 1975, she starred alongside Gene Hackman and Burt Reynolds in Lucky Lady, a film expected to become a major box office hit. But contrary to expectations, it turned out to be a commercial and critical disappointment, criticized for being long and lackluster despite its star-studded cast. For Liza, it was the first sign that her path in film would not be as effortless as the world believed. In 1976, she appeared in A Matter of Time, directed by none other than her father, the legendary Vincente Minnelli. It should have been a symbolic collaboration, the artistic bridge between two generations of a Hollywood dynasty. But reality was heartbreaking. The studio re-edited the film so heavily that Vincente's original vision was destroyed. When it finally premiered, the film was panned by critics, and Liza fell into a deep emotional crisis. She felt she had failed her father, the man she idolized, not just as an actress, but as a daughter. In 1977, Liza returned to the big screen with New York, directed by Martin Scorsese and co-starring Robert De Niro. Both delivered remarkable performances, yet the film underperformed at the box office. Still, from the ashes rose a miracle, the song Theme from New York, New York. Initially overlooked, the song went on to become an anthem for the city itself, immortalized later by Frank Sinatra. To this day, when those opening notes play, people remember Liza, the first to sing it. Her voice filled with pride and loneliness, embodying the very soul of New York. Despite a string of cinematic disappointments, Liza Minnelli remained a dominant force on Broadway. In 1977, she returned to the stage in The Act, a musical written specifically for her by the legendary duo John Kander and Fred Ebb. Her fiery performance, powerful vocals, and total command of the stage earned her a second Tony Award. While Hollywood had turned its back, Broadway opened its arms. There, Liza wasn't just performing. She was living, burning brightly with every breath before her audience. Yet her personal life was far from easy. Ever since her mother's death, Liza had lived in a fragile emotional state. In 1971, while touring and filming relentlessly, she began using tranquilizers to help her sleep and keep up her energy, as she later put it. But the dosage increased over time, and before long, the pills became something she relied on, not just to perform, but to get through daily life. By 1974, after completing a string of film and television projects, her health began to deteriorate. She appeared at shows looking drained, her voice trembling, her moods unpredictable. The press began whispering about her mother's shadow, wondering if Liza was following the same tragic path as Judy Garland. She denied the rumors, but behind the scenes, close friends revealed that she had been hospitalized several times for anxiety and chronic insomnia. Between 1976 and 1978, after enduring more cinematic setbacks with A Matter of Time and New York, the pressure intensified. Liza began drinking more frequently, and when alcohol mixed with sedatives, the situation grew dangerous. There were nights she would dazzle audiences on stage, only to collapse backstage minutes later. Friends recalled that she could swing from euphoria to despair in a matter of hours. In 1979, after completing her final tour of the decade, Liza withdrew from public life and checked into a rehabilitation center in California. She stayed for months, cutting all contact with the media and even her closest friends. In a later interview, she confessed, "All I wanted was to sleep, to stop the noise in my head. Everything was too much. The sounds, the lights, the memories. I didn't even know what I was living for anymore." Yet even when everything seemed to fall apart, her spirit as an artist never broke. If the film lights dimmed, the Broadway lights still shone, and Liza Minnelli still stood beneath them, refusing to leave the stage. In 1981, Liza made her cinematic comeback with the romantic comedy Arthur, co-starring Dudley Moore. Playing a poor but witty and kind-hearted woman, she won back public affection after years of critical and commercial disappointments. The film was a massive box office success, earning hundreds of millions worldwide and becoming one of the decade's most beloved comedies. Liza's natural charm and sharp humor reminded audiences that she didn't need the past's glory. Her own light was enough. Around the same time, Liza entered the golden era of her live performance career. The 1980s saw her conquer audiences worldwide with spectacular concerts blending jazz, pop, and Broadway showmanship, from Las Vegas to London, Paris to Tokyo. Her voice overflowed with energy, her stagecraft was flawless, and her emotional connection with the crowd turned every performance into a cultural event. Liza wasn't just a singer, she was a storyteller, a dancer, a living pulse of music and passion. Her concerts during this era reaffirmed her crown as the queen of show business. It was also during this period that she began her long collaboration with musician Billy Stritch, who would later become her closest friend and musical director. Stritch understood Liza's soul better than anyone, balancing her classic style with freshness, helping her keep her sound vibrant for decades. Their creative partnership became one of the cornerstones of her enduring reign as a stage diva. In 1986, she made history again with her televised concert Liza in London, broadcast internationally and earning an Emmy nomination. It was more than just a musical event. It was a declaration of survival, a woman who had fallen countless times, still standing tall, still shining. A year later, in 1987, Liza starred in Stepping Out, a stage play later adapted into a film about a group of women rediscovering hope and confidence through music and dance. The role was a mirror to her own soul, a woman who had been bruised but never stopped dancing, never stopped believing in the light. The 1980s also revealed the consequences of years of dependence on pills and alcohol. Liza Minnelli's body grew exhausted, her voice sometimes broke mid-song, and her spirit wavered between depression and inexplicable anxiety. In 1984, after collapsing during a rehearsal, she was admitted to the Betty Ford Clinic, the famed rehabilitation center that had treated many major artists. It was the first time she publicly acknowledged her struggles with addiction. "I'm not ashamed," Liza said in an interview soon after. "Addiction is a disease, and if I don't treat it, it will kill me." Her courage in naming her problem changed the way the public saw her, not with pity, but with respect. She stayed at the clinic for several months, undergoing therapy, meditation, and physical recovery. When she returned to the stage, Liza didn't hide what she had been through. Instead, she spoke of it as part of her growth. "I lived in fear for too long. Now I choose to believe that people can help me, and that I can help others." But addiction is never a one-time story. In 2004, amid a career resurgence and a packed touring schedule, Liza relapsed following marital and health problems. Once again, she returned to the Betty Ford Clinic, this time with calm acceptance, understanding that recovery is a lifelong journey, not a single milestone. With her trademark humor, she told reporters, "If I fall, then I fall trying to stand up, and that's still better than lying down." By 2015, after years of battling chronic illnesses, including viral encephalitis, spinal curvature, and multiple hip and knee replacements, Liza returned to Betty Ford for a third time. This time, not out of crisis, but from a conscious desire to take control of her mental and physical health. Doctors told her she didn't need to come back, but she replied simply, "I want to stay well. I want to live long enough to keep singing." Despite her many relapses, Liza Minnelli never saw herself as a victim. She viewed addiction as an illness to be treated, not a sin to be hidden. On every stage, in every interview, she spoke softly but firmly. The only way to get through something is to believe you can. And that belief, unbroken even as her body weakened, kept her standing through the storms, a living symbol of human resilience. The year 1990 brought one of the deepest losses in Liza Minnelli's life, the death of her dearest friend, the legendary fashion designer Halston, from AIDS. Halston was not only the creator of her iconic look, but also her closest companion through both triumphs and breakdowns. His death devastated her, yet rather than sink into grief, Liza chose to honor him through action. She organized a memorial service at Lincoln Center, where she spoke about friendship, unconditional love, and the artist's duty in a time of fear. From that moment, Liza became one of the most visible advocates for the LGBTQ+ community and for AIDS awareness, a cause she would champion tirelessly for decades to come. A year later, in 1991, Liza stepped away from her familiar Broadway sound to experiment with something entirely new. She collaborated with the British duo Pet Shop Boys on the album Results, which featured an electronic pop style far from her usual genre. The unlikely fusion turned out to be a bold triumph, bringing her music to a younger generation. Critics praised Results for its innovation and Liza's adaptability, calling it proof that Liza never grows old. She simply keeps reinventing herself. By 1992, Liza returned to her beloved Broadway roots, with Liza stepping out at Radio City, a grand-scale production that blended song, dance, comedy, and storytelling into one emotionally charged experience. Every performance was sold out, and the show earned her a special Tony Award recognizing her lifelong contributions to the performing arts. In 1993, Liza Minnelli received the Grammy Legend Award, honoring her extraordinary achievements in music. It was more than a career accolade. It was a testament to her ability to transcend boundaries between film, theater, and music, and to her rare place as a multidimensional cultural icon. Throughout the early 1990s, Liza Minnelli was more than just a star. She embodied the very idea of a total performer, someone who could fuse singing, acting, comedy, and storytelling into a single unified art form. Even as the entertainment world evolved, she maintained her place at its center, not through scandal or spectacle, but through sheer talent, devotion, and a heart that refused to stop burning under the spotlight. The 1990s, however, were not without loss. In 1992, the same year Liza Minnelli received the Grammy Legend Award honoring her lifetime contribution to music, she also said goodbye to someone who had once been the most important part of her youth, Peter Allen, her first husband, her confidant, and a memory inseparable from her life. When she learned that he had died from AIDS-related complications, Liza made no public appearance, issued no statement. She simply sent a white wreath to the funeral, accompanied by a small card that read, "Thank you for teaching me that love doesn't have to be perfect to be real." Peter had been the beginning of it all. The man Judy Garland herself introduced to her daughter one night in London in 1964. Liza was 18 then, radiant, ambitious, hungry for life. And Peter, the warm-voiced Australian singer with the gentle smile, was performing with Judy at the London Palladium. Under the stage lights, two young souls found each other, both lonely, both in love with music, both dreaming of standing on their own without anyone's shadow above them. They married on March 3, 1967 in New York, in a small but joy-filled ceremony. Judy Garland cried throughout, saying she had given her daughter to the man with the kindest heart in the world. In those early years, they were the most admired couple in the entertainment world, singing together, writing together, traveling the world to perform. Peter was the one adjusting Liza's microphone backstage. Liza was the one always mentioning his name first in interviews. Yet behind that harmony lay a truth Liza didn't know, or perhaps didn't want to see. Deep down, Peter Allen was gay. In the social climate of the 1960s, that was considered a sin, a secret one had to bury to survive. He loved Liza, but not in the way a man loves a woman. His love was one of affection, gratitude, and deep admiration, but without the passion or desire that sustains a marriage. By the early 1970s, the distance between them had grown. Peter focused more on his own career, while Liza was consumed by cabaret and endless tours. They still appeared together at parties, still smiled for the cameras. But behind those smiles were nights when Liza would hide in the recording studio, crying alone to the sound of the piano. Eventually, when the truth could no longer be hidden, they parted quietly. Their marriage ended in 1974, without drama or bitterness, just two people who had once loved each other, now separated by the soft fog of fate. Peter later came out publicly and became one of the first openly gay artists in the music industry. Liza never criticized or denied him. On the contrary, she continued to sing his songs and spoke of him with tender fondness. In one rare interview, she said, "Peter was the first man I ever loved, and maybe the only one I truly wanted to be happy, even if that didn't mean being with me." So when 1992 ended, a year marked by both public triumph and private loss, Liza understood that she had come full circle, from fame to solitude, from passionate love to gentle grief. Peter Allen was gone, but their bond, imperfect yet deeply real, lived on in every melody she sang, as one of the most beautiful and sorrowful chapters in the luminous, shadowed life of Liza Minnelli. After her separation from Peter Allen, Liza Minnelli took a long time to find her balance again. She poured all her energy into work, touring endlessly across the United States and Europe, as if only the glow of the stage could fill the emptiness inside her. But amid those restless years, another man entered her life, Jack Haley Jr., a renowned Hollywood director and producer, best known for creating acclaimed television specials, including That's Entertainment, a documentary celebrating the golden age of MGM. They reconnected at a party in Los Angeles in late 1973, though they had known each other since Liza was a child. Jack's father, Jack Haley Sr., had famously played the Tin Man in The Wizard of Oz, the same film in which Liza's mother, Judy Garland, portrayed Dorothy. That cinematic link made their meeting feel almost like destiny, a continuation of Hollywood's artistic lineage stretching across generations. Jack Haley Jr. was calm, gentle, and refined, unlike the passionate, impulsive men Liza had known before. With him, she found a sense of peace she hadn't felt in years. Their bond deepened quickly, and love blossomed quietly, without fanfare. In 1974, just months after Liza finalized her divorce from Peter Allen, the two married in an intimate ceremony at Jack's father's home in Beverly Hills. Judy Garland was gone, but many close friends from the entertainment world attended, calling them Hollywood's golden couple. In the early years of their marriage, Liza and Jack lived in a small villa in Bel Air, filled with sunlight and black and white photographs on every wall. They rarely appeared in public and preferred private time together over media attention. Jack was always backstage when Liza performed, carefully watching every technical detail, while she described him as the anchor that keeps me from being swept away by fame. But eventually, cracks began to form. Caused by the very rhythm of life, Liza couldn't slow down. As she embarked on more tours and film projects, the distance between them grew. Jack was a man of quiet and structure, while Liza was a star, fueled by energy, motion, and applause. She would return home at dawn after a concert or night out with friends, while Jack was already up and on his way to work. They often went days without truly seeing each other, except for the occasional weekend. By 1979, after 5 years together, their marriage came to an end. There were no fights, no scandals, no court battles. They parted peacefully. just as they had loved each other with gentleness and respect. Liza told People magazine that year, "Jack is the best man I've ever known. We just live in different rhythms. He needs quiet. I need applause." Even after the divorce, they remained close friends for the rest of their lives. Years later, when Jack Haley Jr. passed away in 2001 from heart failure, Liza quietly attended the funeral, placed a single white rose on his casket, and left without saying a word. Those who were there said she whispered, "Thank you for showing me what peaceful love feels like." Her marriage to Jack Haley Jr. was not a tragedy, but rather a rare moment of calm in Liza Minnelli's storm-filled life, a chapter where she was loved not for her fame or the spotlight, but for who she truly was. Yet, as with every chapter in her story, it closed with bittersweet longing. Because even when peace found her, Liza was born to live in the light of the stage, not in the quiet stillness of a home. After her marriage to Jack Haley Jr. ended, Liza Minnelli entered a new chapter of her life, one filled with experience, scars, and an unrelenting desire to love and be understood. During her tours, she met Mark Garrow, a talented sculptor and the son of veteran Broadway actor Frank Garrow. Unlike the showbiz men she had known, Mark didn't belong to the world of stage lights. He was quiet, introspective, and had a kind of calm strength that drew people in. Exactly what Liza, a woman who lived in constant emotional motion, needed most. They met in the late 1970s at a small art world gathering in New York. Liza was long accustomed to flattery, but Mark was different. He didn't talk about her fame or mention Judy Garland. Instead, he spoke about sculpture, about form and balance, about how people search for harmony both in art and in life. Liza was captivated by the serenity he carried, and before long, they began dating. On December 4th, 1979, they were married in an intimate ceremony in Manhattan, witnessed by only a few close friends. For Liza, this wasn't just another marriage. It was her last, fragile hope for stability. She once said, "Mark never tried to fix me. He just held my hand and walked with me even when I wasn't sure where I was going." In the early years, they lived in a luxurious apartment overlooking Central Park, a rare period of peace when she briefly set aside part of her career to focus on home life. Mark became her emotional anchor, the one who stayed by her side during hospital stays and long stretches of therapy. When she suffered health crises and relapses in the early 1980s, Mark didn't leave. He took her to the Betty Ford Clinic, stood quietly backstage during her comeback performances, and remained her steady presence in the storm. But the life of an artist like Liza was never meant to be still. The endless tours, the fame, the pressure to stay dazzling before the public, all of it gradually widened the distance between them. Mark, used to the quiet world of sculpture, struggled to adapt to the glittering chaos of show business, the lavish parties, sleepless nights, and relentless pace of his superstar wife. And Liza, though deeply loving him, was once again consumed by her rhythm, where applause sometimes became a more intoxicating drug than love itself. By the early 1990s, as Liza's health declined, small disagreements grew into painful arguments. She needed emotional support. He needed the calm she could no longer give. After more than 12 years together, they decided to part ways in 1992. The same year, Liza received her Grammy Legend Award. There was no betrayal, no scandal, just two people who had once loved each other deeply but could no longer exist within two different worlds. After the divorce, Mark Garrow withdrew almost completely from public view, returning to his sculpture studio, while Liza carried on performing, her body and soul both marked by years of struggle. In an interview years later, when asked about Mark, she simply smiled and said, "He was there for me when I was at my weakest. I'll always be grateful for that." Her marriage to Mark Garrow was the longest, most peaceful, and perhaps the most quietly profound chapter of Liza Minnelli's life. It taught her that love doesn't always need to blaze with fireworks. Sometimes it just needs someone patient enough to stay when the whole world turns away. And though they ultimately walked separate paths, Mark remained the man she spoke of with deep respect, the one who witnessed and quietly held her up during the most fragile years of her life. At the dawn of the new millennium, when many believed Liza Minnelli could finally rest after decades under the spotlight, fate tested her once again. In 2000, while on tour in Florida, Liza developed a persistent fever and was rushed to the hospital. Doctors diagnosed her with viral encephalitis, a rare illness that often causes severe damage to the central nervous system. For weeks, Liza hovered between consciousness and coma. When she awoke, she couldn't speak a full sentence, couldn't stand, and had almost completely lost control of her body. Doctors told her and her loved ones bluntly, "She will never walk or talk normally again." For a woman who had lived her entire life through her voice and her movement on stage, it was the cruelest sentence imaginable. But Liza Minnelli, as always, refused to surrender. She said simply, "They told me I couldn't walk. I told them, watch me." Starting from the smallest gestures, lifting a finger, repeating simple syllables to retrain her speech, Liza embarked on a grueling 2-year physical rehabilitation. Therapists recalled her working with an almost obsessive determination. Every morning, she demanded music be played so she could sing along, one trembling note at a time. "If I can still breathe," she told a nurse, "I can still sing." And then, the miracle happened. In 2002, Liza Minnelli returned to the stage for the first time since the illness that nearly ended her career. She no longer moved with the same agility, but her voice, huskier, deeper, carried a power and vulnerability that moved audiences to tears. In an interview, she joked, "I'm Dorothy from the waist up and the Tin Man from the waist down." It wasn't just humor about her metal implants, hip replacements, knee surgeries, spinal and vocal cord operations. It was her way of declaring that she was still standing, even if her body bore the marks of pain and time. In the years that followed, though her health declined, Liza refused to use the word retirement. She performed less, chose smaller venues, but every appearance felt profound, a triumph of spirit. In a 2004 television interview, when asked what kept her going, she smiled and said, "Because I don't know how to do anything else. I was born to sing, to tell stories, and as long as I can breathe, I won't stop." Through sheer willpower, Liza Minnelli not only defeated illness, she became a symbol of artistic endurance, a performer who could fall again and again, yet every time she rose, the world admired her even more. As her health gradually recovered after encephalitis, Liza entered a new chapter, fragile, yet more eager than ever to love and be loved. That was when David Guest, a well-known music producer and event organizer in Hollywood, entered her life. They met in 2001 when David was producing Michael Jackson, 30th Anniversary Celebration, a televised special in which Liza was one of the featured performers. In those post-recovery days, when she was still relearning to speak and walk, David appeared like a new source of light, funny, lively, and seemingly empathetic toward her loneliness. Their relationship developed at lightning speed, surprising even close friends and the press. David showered Liza with affection, spoke romantically, and told everyone he admired not just the star, but the woman behind the fame. To Liza, after years of illness and isolation, he felt like a lifeline. Just months after meeting, they announced their engagement. On March 16, 2002, Liza Minnelli, then 56, held one of the most extravagant weddings Hollywood had ever seen, at Marble Collegiate Church in New York. More than 800 guests attended, including Michael Jackson, who served as best man, Elizabeth Taylor, Diana Ross, Elton John, and Broadway legends. The press called it the wedding of the century, a dazzling, almost surreal spectacle, with Liza glowing in a sparkling white gown, smiling as if every past heartbreak had finally faded away. But in truth, it was only the beginning of one of the most chaotic chapters of her life. The marriage to David Guest quickly turned into a nightmare. Behind the glamour, constant fights erupted over his controlling behavior and her unpredictable moods. Guest wanted to manage every part of Liza's life, from her concerts and TV deals to her wardrobe and even her public demeanor. Friends said he gradually isolated her from old companions, making her emotionally and financially dependent on him. By 2003, just 16 months after the wedding, the relationship completely collapsed. David Guest filed for divorce, accusing Liza of physically assaulting him during a drunken rage, causing serious head injuries that required hospitalization. Liza countered, claiming that Guest had manipulated, insulted, and even tried to poison her with medication. The lawsuits dragged on for 4 years, turning their divorce into a media circus. Reporters described it as a brutal war between fame and loneliness. Throughout that time, Liza stayed almost entirely out of the public eye, focusing instead on her recovery. Friends said she was deeply wounded, not only by the failed marriage, but by the betrayal of someone she had completely trusted. Finally, in 2007, the court granted the divorce. Liza received no financial settlement, but she said she only wanted one thing: freedom. Afterward, Liza made a wry but heartfelt remark. "If anyone hears I'm getting married again, come over and slap me." The line made audiences laugh, but behind it lay exhaustion. She had searched for love too many times, only to be left hurt again. David Guest died in London in 2016 at the age of 62, while on his David Guest Is Not Dead tour. Though they hadn't spoken in years, Liza issued a brief statement of condolence, calling it a sad ending for a man who once made me laugh so much. Her relationship with David Guest marked the final chapter in Liza Minnelli's turbulent love life, a mix of passion, glamour, and pain that bordered on tragedy. After it all, she stopped searching for romantic love. From then on, Liza chose solitude, devoting her days to music, her closest friends, and the rare quiet she had spent a lifetime chasing. After decades of living under the dazzling lights of Broadway and stages around the world, Liza Minnelli gradually chose a different rhythm. Quieter, more intimate, yet still full of emotion. She began performing in smaller venues, where she could see the audience's eyes, hear their laughter, and feel their breath. Performances like Feinstein's at the Nico in 2016 or her intimate tours with longtime friend Billy Stritch felt less like concerts and more like conversations between old friends. Liza still sang with her whole heart, but she no longer needed the roar of applause, only connection. What moved audiences most was that she never sang Over the Rainbow, her mother Judy Garland's immortal song. When asked why, Liza simply smiled and said, "That song belongs to my mother, it's part of her, not me." In that brief answer lived a lifetime of respect, an endless love, and the humble acceptance that Judy's light was never meant to be replaced, only carried forward. At the 2022 Oscars, Liza Minnelli's surprise appearance on stage alongside Lady Gaga left the world deeply moved. Seated in a wheelchair, her hands trembling slightly, she still wore that radiant smile. Many assumed her health had deteriorated badly. Later, Lady Gaga revealed that Liza had originally been scheduled to sit backstage due to back pain. But a last-minute change brought her out to present an award. Though unplanned, Liza agreed, not for fame, but out of respect for the art of cinema she had devoted her life to. The moment Gaga held her hand and whispered, "I got you," as Liza smiled back, became one of the most unforgettable moments of that Oscars night, a symbol of grace and connection between two generations of performers. After that event, Liza largely withdrew from public performances, but continued to quietly engage in creative projects. In 2024, The documentary, Liza, a truly terrific, absolutely true story, premiered at the Tribeca Film Festival, chronicling her extraordinary life through rare footage and heartfelt interviews. That same year, she received the Industry Dance Awards Lifetime Achievement Award, honoring her irreplaceable contributions to the art of performance. Never one to rest, she also became a producer on Drag the Musical, a Broadway project celebrating freedom, identity, and the joy of being oneself. The show has been described as Liza's love letter to a younger generation. Liza said the project made her feel young again, reminding her of the creative, carefree spirit of 1970s New York, a time when everyone was free to be who they truly were. Though she rarely appears in public now, Liza continues to work on her memoir, set for release in 2026, which is said to be the truest account of her life after decades of silence. Today, she lives in Los Angeles, in a small, sunlit home surrounded by books, a piano, and framed memories of her past. Old friends like Michael Feinstein and Billy Stritch still visit, reminiscing about the golden years. When asked if she ever misses the stage lights, Liza just smiles softly. The lights are dimmer now, but they've never gone out. It's a simple answer, yet it says everything. Time may have passed, but Liza Minnelli remains Liza Minnelli, a woman born to sing, to stand in the light, and to remind the world that resilience, like music, can keep us alive long after everything else fades away. Liza Minnelli's life is not a gentle love song, but a jagged symphony, every high note paired with a low one. She never tried to be perfect, nor did she ever hide her wounds. That's what makes people love her, not for her titles, but for her courage to be real. Liza has never been Judy Garland's shadow, but proof that light can be passed on, never eclipsed. In her 70s, as most of her contemporaries have retreated into memory, she continues to live creatively, freely, and gratefully, as if every breath is another chance to step into the spotlight once more. If you believe Liza Minnelli's story deserves to be honored, not just for her talent, but for the strength of a woman who stood tall after every fall, leave a like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell to join us in celebrating more extraordinary journeys behind Hollywood's bright lights. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next video.